Hi, everybody. Welcome to your haunting board game industry questions answered panel. And I think we are live. We're going to wait just like 10 seconds to see if anybody jumps on. So you're welcome to jump on the Zoom with us because we figured it would be really helpful if you wanted to ask us directly any of the questions that you might have. But if not, we'll be hanging out here talking away.
Sure.
And also, feel free to type in those questions if you're not comfortable jumping in person. Either way, we want to hear what questions you have. We have ones that have affected us, so we have generated some, but we'd really like to be able to help anybody listening directly with the questions they have. So without further ado, I am going to share
Dun, 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 the magical slides.
Yeah, super fancy here. All the technology. Maybe not.
You started. It says started screen sharing.
Did I share a screen?
There it is. I see it.
Cool. So there it is. This is our panel. Take a look. See what it says. If this isn't what you were looking for, you're in the wrong panel. And I'm so sorry, but now you're ours forever. So,
all right. So let me just get that.
That being said.
Whoa. Okay. Oh, look.
Who are we? Kurt, who are you?
Right. So I'm Kurt Covert, and I'm the owner of Smirk and Dagger Games. I've been in the business for 18 years. I started before there was Kickstarter. I had a lot of concerns, a lot of questions. I asked everyone I could find who would actually tell me anything about the industry. I'm still here. So I must have gleaned something along the way. And my hat's completely falling off here, by the way.
Okay.
It's going to be very distracting, I think. But okay,
I mean, you can take it off. We had the first effect.
It's okay. No, I'll go for it.
You'll persevere? All right.
I'll persevere. And Julie, so you have to roll out who you are then.
Oh, right. So, hi, I'm Julia Hearn. It's nice to meet you all. I am the vice president of Greenbrier Games and the COO of same company. So I started not in the industry. I came in through education. I made board games for school systems to promote learning and of course, the sales pitch being raising testing scores through gaming. And they let me do it, which made it more fun for kids to learn, which was part of the goal. But from there, co-founded Greenbrier Games in 2011. So it's been 10 years with my company. Yeah. And in the meantime, I've done some other stuff. Currently, I'm on the Gamma board, and also I do a podcast / Friday live show with Rachel Blasky called You're Invited that talks about specifically board game industry stuff. So that's who I am.
Which is a great show, and you should tune in. So
thanks. Right. We've been doing because of conventions, we've only been releasing on YouTube a Monday morning quick, like 3 to 5 minute. Hey, if you want to think about this, think about these 4 things, and where I'll be back at it after. I think early December, we're going to do another series of 8 questions specifically about Kickstarter. So let's start with the spirit of design. And what do we mean by that? We mean what scares us when actually designing a game. If you're a designer and you're making a game, what is it? What are the concerns and fears you might have? So the first question about that would be,
yes. I actually, before we get in here, I mean, let's, if we can, for those who are watching right now, if you can kind of let us know, we can talk about 3 different things. We can talk about some of the things that you get, concerned about when you're actually in the process of designing. We can talk about what kind of, get you nervous about approaching publishers? Or if you are already down the self-publishing track, what are the things that are keeping you up at night as you start thinking about that? If you want to type in like where you are in your journey, what you want to hear about more, we absolutely want to tailor this to the things you guys really want to talk about. Again, a lot of this Metatopia weekend is really about finding answers for the things that you really want to know the most. So the more you participate, the more you type in, the types of things you want to know about, it helps guide this process a lot. So Andy,
that's true.
Anyone typing in? All right. Right. Okay. So now we'll just blunder blindly into the darkness. Go ahead.
Sweet. First question that I'm going to ask you, Kurt. So,
yes.
And the thing is, we're both coming from a place where we have both designed, self-published as well.
Yes.
And then grew, and probably wear more of the publisher hat now, but we've both been there where we've made the game, tried to promote the game either to other people or through it. So yes, speaking to this, in your lifetime and career, when did you move from, I have this an idea and I put it on paper and I've just showed it to this small group of friends or family members that I trust and who are going to, not hurt my feelings, to I need other people to see this so that I can actually get an idea of whether or not this is a thing beyond just something I enjoy for my own personal experience?
Right. Well, obviously the hurdles that people typically have are, one, they're nervous about putting their game in front of people. One, because is anyone gonna like it? Or is someone going to steal my idea for a game? Who do I actually go and like even pitch to? How do I find people to play? And so what I did was I know I knew just enough about copyright protection that I felt like, okay, I've gone ahead, I'm kind of putting it in the public eye. I actually like published something on my website, and I don't think I actually applied for a copyright at that time. This was 18 years ago. I was still really, really new, but I just bit the bullet and said, you know what, this feels like a community that I'm not necessarily that concerned about, and I put it out in public. I went to like gaming conventions. I went to game stores. I found people who were just willing to take a look at a new game. And I'd already, like you said, I'd done my due diligence. I played the game by myself solo several times. So I knew that it generally worked. I put it in front of my family and friends who might not tell me my baby is ugly, but again, I could see actually people interacting with the game and saying, yes, okay, I get it, it's working, but yeah, you really have to start putting it in front of people who don't know you, who aren't going to spare your feelings, so you can really knock all the burrs off and understand where the problems are. And that can be scary too when you start hearing about that.
Right.
So where have you kind of taken it from there, where you're like, okay, now people have identified things like.
Yeah. So it's very odd because I had, school boards judging my work for very different, not for entertainment purposes, for education purposes.
Yeah.
So there was a certain level of getting feedback, whether I wanted to hear it or not, that I was already thick-skinned to, because, and that was but it was also part of my job. So if it wasn't great, the feedback was pretty cut and dried of it needs to do this. These are the objectives. Here are the goals. This is the, the blueprint of education that you need to be following. So it had a level of, I already had baked in this idea of it's not me if what are my goals? Have I met them?
Mm-hmm.
But doing it for entertainment, you don't quite have the same rubric. And so that was the challenge, was changing my rubric, because my rubric wasn't about, does it meet the goals of you can do the objective and all the math adds up per se. It's, while you're doing that, are people having a emotional response that you're looking for?
Right.
Sometimes laughter, sometimes it is frustration, depending on the game. If it's a versus game, if it's are they getting the emotional response? And also the type of feedback is far more broad, because you're not in a school system where there's kind of already rubrics set in place and people are pretty good about, they do all teachers know how to do the compliment sandwich, where it's, oh, this is great. Here you need to work on this, but I really liked this. Like everybody, every educator, especially if you're at like a school board panel level, knows how to give that feedback, as opposed to, well, this was dumb. Like it's a very different thing. So I get that. So I created my own, knowing when we got Zpocalypse, our first game, to a level where we had played it so many times that it didn't matter if we played it again. It was so rote. We were not going to see anything. There was zero fresh eyes left on anything that we could do. So we did play it a lot and revised it a lot internally, and with our game group. So I think that also helped that it was 3 of us and then Ricky. So 4 of us working on the game, and all of us giving each other feedback helped tremendously before we brought it to our game group. But then bringing it to the bigger picture, you're still going to get, it's a sandboxy RPG style, so it is, if you're a Euro gamer, it's not your game. And it is a polarizing type of gameplay style, and zombies is also a very polarizing topic. So we were going to get the people who are like, well, this is just not our thing at all in any way, shape, or form, who played it. So I made questionnaires, because that's what teachers do. We make rubrics. But baking in that was really helpful, because I could say, if you would be willing to write down your thoughts, then I could look at them privately and have all kinds of emotional responses to it that nobody had to see. Like if I started crying because you really hated it, like nobody had to see that. Nobody had to see that.
Well, and also, then you didn't get defensive about it either then.
You didn't react poorly. Because we knew that the gameplay, like the topic, the genre, was geared towards a probably younger audience. Mm-hmm. We went to a lot of colleges in the area and asked if they had a gaming group or a video gaming group or anybody interested for a game night. And turns out, if you're offering free events to colleges, they're really receptive, and we're happy to give us space and find a bunch of people and post about it and get a ton of people in every time. So that was our start. And also growing a thick skin pretty quickly, because college students are pretty unpolished with how to give feedback. So mm-hmm. they were honest, and it was useful, and it gave us the opportunity to very quickly get past the defensive piece of it. So that was probably our first step into finding gaming groups.
Now, do you still find that the rubric is the best way to go now that your skin is thicker, or do you actually like to have people just kind of give you their impressions verbally?
I actually have risen to the level of sophistication where I have a 3-tier process, 4 tier process. So it's internal, all of us playing, then it's broad, almost throwing spaghetti. What are your impressions? And even then, I got a comment recently. Our game that will be going to Kickstarter in March, Fire for Light, is another big narrative, grand scope, lots of stuff game. So there's lots of moving parts. And I put it in front of a bunch of people, let them play. And I took notes while they were playing, watched very carefully the interaction, And then they gave me a bunch of feedback afterwards, and I listened and I said, thank you so much. And I responded, but I took 0 notes. And somebody noticed that. They said, you're not taking any notes right now. And I said, no, I took the notes. I mean, you're giving me your thoughts and everything, but what I was looking for at this point was how engaged you were. And you were super engaged during it. And I also could write down where I saw the disconnects mechanically. And you are giving me all this time and effort, which I appreciate right now, but a lot of it is, well, you could do, which I'm not the designer. I'm the developer. But what I'm looking for was how engaged you are. And the amount of information you're giving me tells me you are very involved emotionally with this game.
Right.
That's what I was looking for. I mean, if you want me to pretend to write down like at this point, but that was what I was looking for. I appreciate all of this. It's just, that's not where we're at. But because of that, I would love to reach out to you when it is more polished, and I need that fine tuning to get those specific points. So that's phase 2. And you also kind of have to make sure that your people are okay with that, because somebody might think that their idea is the greatest idea and want to be incorporated into the game and be a little offended if you don't. And then I do the far more polished, I'm looking at this piece of the game and I want to know how well this is working. But again, being very specific and giving that before I
upfront
take information. That place I usually still do questionnaires because it is so tailored. And then finally the blanket, oh, you have never played this game before. Here's the rule book. Here's the game. Can you figure it out and tell me where I missed the mark with, now that it's going, before it goes out to the general public to play, all the places that I think are polished that aren't. So those are my 4 steps.
Gotcha. Well, I've only done, I think, a questionnaire really probably the first time I did a game. And what I found was it does prevent kind of the groupthink from taking over the feedback.
Yep.
But on the other hand, I find that it's a little bit less chemical. People feel like they have to fill in a blank, rather than just what their impression was. So, they might start inventing things that are problems just because there's a spot that says, well, what's not working,
what didn't work. Right.
Yeah.
I totally get that too, which is why I do it now where it's very specific questions, as opposed to just, what are you thinking? What did you like? What didn't you like? That I can see that a lot better now that don't feel the need to jump in anymore, which when you're new, you do. It's your baby. And it's still sometimes hard where I have to like sit on my hands and just watch.
Because
watching, but you get a lot more.
Observing and listening is far more important. And it can be very difficult not to jump in, correct, answer, like guide, what your intention was. But in my head. So in college, I was a theater major. I know you're shocked. You're all shocked. And our directing class, we had to rewrite Hamlet and then hand it to somebody else to direct and act. And we did this several rounds of it with everybody taking turns writing, directing, and acting in the directing class. Mm-hmm. So there was like 3 weeks of just nonstop Hamlet. But when it was your turn to be the writer and you were watching your version being written, if you tried to make any kind of comment, our professor would yell out, "Shakespeare is dead." So as the writer, when it was your turn to be the writer, you didn't get to, and so I hear Bill in my head every time while I'm watching a gameplay decide, like, once it's manufactured and boxes are out there, you don't get to be there to be like, but no, wait, what you see is, so don't do it to yourself. Like you have to be ready to let your baby go. And if you can't, that's a hard thing. It's something that absolutely is hard to do, and absolutely you need to learn to do it. So we got a question now. One of our viewers is saying that I find it helpful as a play tester to ask, what kind of feedback are you looking for right now? And do you find it helpful to let your play testers know where your focus is? I absolutely do. very often it's sometimes the things that I may not be looking for that either I've just suddenly observed or someone raises, and that can be sometimes, you know, as important or more, because those are the things that I'm being caught off guard on. But if I'm looking for specific things, you know, if I'm in that phase of playtesting where, all right, I think the end game is a little shaky. I'm looking for, like, did this new idea, is it solving for it? But and I will certainly mention that to playtesters. But
or are playtesters asking for clarification on the same spot over and over and over and over?
Oh, sure.
And is that spot necessary to your game? Is it about spending a lot of time revising it so it's clearer, or is it about, that was a cool idea, but maybe it's not for this game?
Yeah, but I think it's very helpful for a playtester to ask, what kind of feedback are you looking for right now? Because quite honestly, it might be far enough down the road that some of the suggestions or ideas or things are like kind of beyond that scope. We've left, you know,
of course, I feel like a lot of people at Metatopia are quite informed playtesters.
Oh yeah.
So that is, I actually learned so much my first Metatopia observing other people giving feedback about how I want to present asking for feedback, which was pretty fantastic.
Yeah. So there's a question that I have heard, you know, many times over the years, where people, you know, were scared that they were scared to show their design. You know, are people going to, you know, steal it from them if they show it publicly? And what's interesting is, while here in the hobby industry, you know, the answer has always been, well, no, that's not really a major concern. In fact, you know, sometimes the best input are going to be from other designers and gamers and, you know, even retailers. You know, they give you a lot of great feedback, and it's a very much a great community. There is a difference, however, if you are building a game for more of the mainstream, if you're planning on pitching to Hasbro, if you're planning on pitching to a much bigger game company for a much broader audience, there's a different side of game design. And the nomenclature changes. Those game designers are called inventors. On that other side of the fence. And what I was most shocked by when I actually started to design for that side as well was that inventors are very closed-lipped. They hold everything very close. They do not share ideas. They don't tell you a title, a thematic, they keep everything close to the chest.
Well, you've been to New York Toy Fair, yes?
Yeah.
So New York Toy Fair, you can feel like it's amazing. If you ever have the opportunity, please go, even if it's just to walk around. But you also, you immediately get the different vibe, because it's not just the designers, it's the corporations take their trade secrets very seriously. So walking past like Pusheen or Mattel or Hasbro and trying to go in, I think it was Pusheen specifically, I liked to call it the Nana Mafia, because it was older women but in suits, and they closed ranks and they were like, hi, are you a retail? What is your purpose here? Do you have an appointment? And I was like, no, I saw the giant Pusheen doll and I was called to it. They were like, well, if you have no business being here, you need to leave our booth immediately. And that's a very different. So yes, you do have to be very protective, because that's the mentality, that is the entire culture of, because you're going into the world of toys, and toys is a very different approach than board games, or hobby board games at least.
Well, or even really like the board games that are produced for those larger companies, but they're treated with that same heightened level. And I think probably it's because you know, hobby games, you know, your first run might be 3,000, 5,000 games. Their first run are going to be tens of thousands, 100,000. It's bigger money. It's more competitive. They're a lot more choiceful. There's like less avenues, and therefore, yeah, they are trade secrets. So everyone walking around with a suitcase of game designs, they don't say anything about them. And I've had like dear friends in that industry who we just don't talk about what we are working on, because in that culture, there have been instances where games have been uh, stolen or lifted in the past, and I think it happens more because of the dollars involved. But again, here in the hobby industry,
I can think of, so to be fair,
yeah,
I can think of several instances where a game was taken and reskinned and presented as new. Very rarely. Of
yeah,
thousands of games I can think of, it's a handful of times. I also know that every time in the hobby industry that happened, it made big waves in a negative way.
yeah,
And that game was completely panned and looked over and was not successful. So it is almost, yes, it can happen. I'm not going to say it never has. I know several instances. I know them because people talked about it in such a negative light, and others responded by making sure that that game didn't have any degree of success.
yeah.
So we kind of
And that
self-regulate
said,
in that way.
yeah, and that said, I think it's true of both the hobby industry as well as the more broad market toy and game industry, that inventors and designers are the lifeblood uh, of the companies who make games. So being in good standing, I mean, when these things happen, they do get known. The news travels, and Hasbro, Smirk and Dagger, we can't have a reputation as being like a negative, I mean, you have to make sure that people know that you are professional, you're responsible, you're a good citizen, and because otherwise, inventors and designers are not going to continue to come
work
to you
with
with
you.
their work. Yeah,
Correct.
and so so I think that's kind of important. Even Hasbro, is not going to sign an NDA, but they will create a document that says, yes, you showed me this game on this date, and our general thoughts right now on the game are X, Y, or Z. So it's documented, and and they know that they are not going to be overstepping bounds, or stealing things. So it really is not a major thing to be concerned with. I think especially in the hobby industry, where designers very often help each other. But
that being said, I think that most people are okay with knowing that that's can be a fear or a concern, will be willing to sign an NDA. And there's a lot of companies now, when playtesting, it's kind of an automatic thing. And it's not really, like you said, and it may not be necessary even for the game design. It might be because there's an IP attached that's bigger and requires it.
right.
So that can happen.
And an IP being an intellectual property, a movie, a TV show, that kind of thing. Yeah.
A book series.
Yeah.
It's anything that has already made money in, again, an adjacent industry.
Yeah.
So some of them can be more rigorous, but even I know several companies that just kind of, if you're a play tester, you sign a blanket NDA that anything that you play on with that company is confidential, to make the designers more comfortable oftentimes, because it's easier to just do it than not. And also because sometimes, honestly, mostly for publishers at least, sometimes it's a marketing thing, because a playtester might get excited and share something before people are ready to talk about it, that it's being released. And it might be years before it is released. So people are suddenly talking about something, and then by the time it comes up, they're like, oh, that old thing?
Yeah.
That's been around for years. Well, it hasn't. It's new, but we develop it over years, and therefore the perception is that it's already it's already passe. So that's another reason that publishers might do it and are probably willing, if you ask them about it, to at least consider it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Julie, let me ask you a question. Just from like a publishing point of view. Let's kind of level up from, I think a lot of the people here at Metatopia are, some of them are kind of past the 101 nature of the train. So
agreed.
What are some of the things that still keep you up at night? What are the fears and concerns that you have been having in the recent months and years as you continue to publish?
Oh, can we narrow that down? There's so many.
Well, there's so many, right? Well, and to be fair, like the first thing is, it is scary to be a publisher.
Okay, so being a publisher is being a small business owner.
Yes.
And being a small business owner is, you can think of the trajectory of that in so many different ways with so many different industries.
Yeah. And
having spent now a good, like, over a year interviewing other small business industry professionals from other companies through You're Invited, there's the arc is pretty similar. So whether you are a freelance accountant or a restaurateur, there's a lot of the similar, there's a bell curve there that follows the same thing as being a publisher in the board game industry, where, the ebb and flow of the market versus like the time of year trends can really affect you far more than bigger companies that are much more insulated towards that, even if you see them coming. And also the time you spend to make those projections versus making your games versus marketing your games versus talking to real retailers, because you are a smaller business, splitting your attention, because in bigger companies you have teams that do each of those things independently. And in a small business, you're doing all of them, or a good chunk of them, because there's only a few of you. It takes a lot of time. So there's a lot. And so let's talk about just this weekend, the things that are keeping me awake at night. Going into publishing, they said, it'll be fun, they said. No, the thing that is, so I have a Kickstarter coming up on Tuesday, and it is a smaller Kickstarter. It is intended, we kind of change things up, and our next big game is in beginning of February, or end of February, beginning of March Kickstarter timeline. To do that takes a lot of time. It's a big game. There's lots of miniatures and components and writing stories for it and make sure each one is balanced with the other and it builds properly. That's a lot. And I can't do that while also doing my day job at an office, because I don't have a day job at an office anymore. So I am publishing other games, or in this case, we're actually going to be doing two games, two of our second and third game ever, Ninja Dice and Yashima, and reprinting them. But also we have made some adjustments, made some changes, streamlined the gameplay, because they are 10 years old. And so they felt a little bit older. And also because that was the feedback we kept getting, is we like this game, except for overwhelmingly. So big concern right now is, the people who are the diehard fans, are they going to be upset? Is it different enough that people are going to see the value of rebuying? Are they going to put off new people from coming to the table because they're upset? How do I present that in a way that is transparent and factual without spending all my time focusing on these already established players, in lieu of trying to cast a wider net to make sure that new players, who I think will actually enjoy it more, don't get called in, because I'm spending so much time with this smaller demographic of established players. These are concerns I have.
Very real concerns. I'm facing that very same thing with a project I've got coming up in Q1, which is a re-envisioning of my very first game, Hex. But broadly, one of my biggest fears as a publisher right now these days is we put so much time, energy, money into developing a game, putting it on the market, marketing it, and then it tends to almost be dead in 3 months. The long tail of these games is kind of gone,
right,
in many cases. But let's say you've got one that has done, fairly well, but hasn't done well enough to deserve a reprint. I have a tough time really evaluating, is this a game that has ongoing life in it? Is this a game that had its day and I need to put it away?
right.
The decision to reprint, and the scary part is you're now going to invest another, I don't know, 10, 20, $30,000 into the publishing of that game and the shipping and everything else.
Right.
If that sits in your warehouse, that is lost money. It's if it's not moving, not only are you not getting the money back in for those sales, but eventually you're going to be charged for holding that stock in your warehouse. So it can be really scary. So how do you deal with that same kind of a situation?
Well, so this is the difference because these are the things you're thinking about when you're just a designer or a designer just starting to think about self-publishing. You're thinking about the physical. I feel like most people are focusing on getting the physical thing made and not thinking about, once it's made, what have you done and put in place for its success or its lack of success. So talking about the lack of success, if I have a game that does that, I now have certain venues where there's a certain amount of time so that I give it its due diligence before I start looking at more of a wholesale selling it off in a group. How much am I selling that for? What is it going to go for? Which means I'm going to have to adjust my expectations for online sales, convention sales, because if somebody can pull it up and be like, well, I can get it at miniature market for X amount less, that means even at conventions, it's not going to sell for me. So I have to make sure that I give it its due diligence and spend time and care and look at a bunch of different venues, which I have now, stockpiled. So, I have here are hobby stores. Here is a more mass market. Here are, have I tried looking at education specific sales? Have I looked and libraries? Is it a game that will do well there instead? And maybe I focus on, so where am I putting my energies in introducing this game and giving it the best chance to get out into the market and get played and received by the group of people who are going to want to play it without my hubris getting in the way and being like, but I love this game. It was my baby. Yeah. I spent hours doing this one little thing on this one little card so that it was perfect. Like that all has to go, like that's gone. That ship has sailed. Before I get to the, okay, well, if I sell it in bulk, how can I get it so that it's in, the more Dollar Tree type stores where at least I'm cutting my losses and I'm not paying for warehousing. That's a thing that I have venues for because I've built them up over the years. And I have a step process of, well, first we do this and then we do this and then we look at here. And I'm always learning more and I'm always trying to find more venues of who can I present this to? Who can I talk to? Who's a contact who might be interested in carrying this game so that it gets out into the world and gets played and gets enjoyed by people. And I am not losing money while doing that.
Right. And that's a great solution for something that you have seen starting to slow down in a particular market, either finding a new market or a new way to move some of that stock. I guess the question is, you've got to, you can always tell, like when there's a title that is you can't keep it in stock. That's like what everyone is shooting for. But it's also it's hard to have a title that actually does that consistently. So
it's also hard because production is so challenging, especially right now.
Slow, right?
And timelines of, to your point, the market is so ever changing that if it's ever out of the eye for too long, the zeitgeist of the masses, the eye shifts, and then when it comes back, they're like, oh, that thing. So you have to have, like, how do you even holding back, even though, your warehouse is like, but there's a backlog and I need to sell it. No, you're going to keep that 500 and I'm going to sell 12 of them this week. And that feels like making that kind of a decision of slowly selling out something which seems unfair and is very upsetting to retailers or very upsetting to the masses, but it's going to keep it so that when it comes back in stock, you haven't lost all that attention to begin with. And that's a decision that a publisher has to make, which feels disingenuous to the general masses, but you have to do that in order to actually have that second print run or third print run actually be able to sell again. That's a hard decision to make. Yeah. So yes, but you were saying.
Well, and I was saying, so the other side is, I've got a title. It did great. It's on its second printing, but do I feel, because maybe it's slowed down a little bit, and now I have to decide, okay, it's still selling. It's not selling at the same rate. Is it worth putting back on press? I find that an agonizing decision, whether it's my design or someone else's design that I've adopted. That is one of the things that I probably stress out about, one of the most things,
because the other thing being, again, small publisher.
Yeah.
If I took the time away from working on this design to market this already established game, would it pick back up?
Right.
Do I want to take that time, or do I want to focus on this other game that I now have?
Right.
And you have to pick. So small business owner, a big company could be like, all right, well, we did some focus groups and this is the reaction. And we think that if you just republished it, but with cats, we're good. Mm-hmm. Change all the art to cats. And everything's gonna, so don't have to change anything else. Just add some cat art. That's a big company able to do a focus group. Will be able to do that. We don't have that luxury. We don't. Yeah. Honestly, that's my answer for everything though. Just reprint it with cats in it. And
well, it's
industry secret, friends. You've heard it here.
It's not a terrible idea, really.
Honestly.
All right. So other things that I think have been keeping all publishers up at night.
We're at here.
Oh yeah.
That's where we're at right now.
I've just we just went on all over.
But I wanted that's fine. I picked clip art for no reason, but that's okay. Look, see, scary, spooky, go into the woods.
Yeah. So we are in the woods, and I know there have been other panels that have talked to.
Yes,
we've definitely talked about shipping woes, and so this is something that I think all publishers have had to deal with, and quite honestly, all industries have had to deal with, and everyone has been looking for different solutions to supply problems. So thoughts on the scariness that is that?
Well, this is the flip side of that scary, like what if something is slowing down and it isn't selling as well, or if the market feels it's dead. This is your time to dust that game back off and
you've got stock on the shelf.
I have stock. You have a need for holiday sales. I have a solution. I did that this Monday. This past week, I did a presentation to a bunch of retail store owners and said, okay, for holiday sales, we know for board games, the price point, the magic number is between $25 and $40. Here are my games that are more family friendly, that maybe, but also the gamer in your family might not have, because Greenbrier Games is a smaller company. Mm-hmm. Here are the games that I think would be a good fit for your store to carry, that are available for you to purchase and sell in your store, purchase wholesale and sell your store right now. And those are the only things I presented, so that these retail store owners, I'm like, here's your opportunity if there are gaps, because the code names and I love code names, but whatever game it is, are not available for your holiday sales. Those impulse buys or those I need to buy a gift games. Knowing that and knowing your market means, yes, it's also super frustrating because So Lost Ones is our game that was our last Kickstarter, has been done. It's been finished manufacturing for 2 months now, just sitting waiting for a boat.
Yeah.
It's not even on a boat. Well, that's not true. The ones that were shipped locally through trucking and trains are available in China. Those stores have them, but everybody else in the world does not have them because they're all waiting for boats. And that's frustrating. But also if you focus on the frustration of that, that is all consuming and you stay awake at night. So you have to be flexible as a small business owner and say, okay, I can't focus on that. So I'm not going to dwell on it, because if I dwell on it, that's all I'm talking about. And then people are only focusing on when is it coming? When is it coming? Right. I can focus on what I do have and why is this a new opportunity to revisit some of my older games that are still fun and still exciting and maybe got passed over the first time because of the cult of the new. So it could be new to you and you can present it as new because they weren't as well known. That's okay.
Well, that is super smart. It's something that I've also been focused on. And quite honestly, it's something that retailers themselves have been focused on. So I know I was talking with a couple of retailers recently, and they said, well, yeah, if we can't get the games that people are coming in and asking for, what we've done is we started to buy games that are adjacent. So there are 3 different games I could recommend that if you like this type of game, you are probably going to enjoy this.
Yes, right.
Which is in stock right now and you can walk out of the store with and go play. Right. And that has been really successful for them as well.
Yep. And that is, there are plenty of games out there. I mean, everybody at Metatopia knows there's so many designs out there and many of them are getting made. There are plenty of games out there. So there's, even though the sky is falling, there's plenty of opportunity still for people to buy, play, and love your design if we don't focus on the sky falling piece of it.
Yeah. So one other thing, unless you want to start a new topic, I'll throw another one out there.
Yeah, go for it. Although, have there been any questions at all? Is there
just the one, I think, and no one has joined our little, but
so
we're so gripping. So one of the things that I was very scared about coming into this season, I'm now going to doff the hat. It's too much.
Did it.
It's too much. There we go. Pumpkin gets it. Okay. He looks good on the pumpkin, by the way.
It does look good on the
pumpkin. So one of the things that I was terrified of moving into the last couple months was convention season, the reopening of conventions. And I have to say, I think everyone was, are people going to be respectful of the protocols? Are the protocols going to work? Am I going to commit to going to Gen Con and then have a breakthrough case as careful as I was and then lose my investment on the next show? Like, all of these things are flying through my head. And the one thing I can say, if people had not gone but were thinking about it, I have to say that I was pretty impressed overall with the community. People, I think, were very respectful of the protocols. I did not see a lot of half mask wearing or, people being really irresponsible. And we're talking about a lot of people coming through the hall. And I think the reason we didn't hear a lot of horror stories is because a lot of people who came were actually vaccinated and were respectful of the protocols. And I think it went pretty darn well. And then, of course, even then you're thinking as a publisher, well, am I going to be able to cover my costs? because it's now going to be half the amount of people who are there. But that at least for me, that was not a problem.
No, that was absolutely not a problem. My sales were better this year than they were in 2018 or 2019.
We broke every record for 18 years, and Origins, we doubled our numbers for 2019. And it wasn't just like the one hot new game. It was people shopping across the entire history of our line.
Same.
So people were excited to rejoin the community, get back to doing what they loved, and they were willing to do everything they could to keep everyone safe. But man, they wanted to come play and spend some cash. And man, it was, I thought it was a great thing.
Again, that's a choice. Like I appreciated like the people who were like, I don't feel safe yet. I am not attending. And I fully respect that decision.
Oh, I do too. Yeah.
As a small business owner, I couldn't ignore the opportunity. And it was also very interesting because a lot of, again, bigger companies have more of a windfall, and we're able to say, you know what, we're going to stay away for another year and wait for it to be safe. But also there was a lot of little rumors, whispers of them saying, well, in-person conventions are obsolete. And I feel like that was a little bit of a marketing push on their behalf to try to feel that out. And I already know that it's been announced that Asmodee and Simon are coming back to Gen Con next year. So clearly that was not the case. That was not the actual experience for most of the publishers attending. I also saw a lot of very good reinforcing of even the enforcers at both shows, and the community pushing back that people wear their masks, make sure they're fully on. I saw somebody with the half mask and an enforcer call over to them and be like, hey, and just gesture, and the person pushed it up over their nose. So I saw one example of that, and right across from me, the booth across from me, somebody wasn't wearing a mask, and somebody was like, and everybody was on top of that person immediately, like, where's your mask? And he's like, oh, I forgot it. And everybody's like, I have an extra.
Yeah.
It was like an immediate. So I think everybody coming was also very cognizant of being respectful and aware. I also went to Essen, and even more so, having to show your vaccination card, everywhere. So it wasn't just the convention, any restaurant, any public place you walked in and they'd say card, and I had a screenshot of my phone because just pulling it out and they scan, there's a barcode, and they had to scan it. So you had to get a approved transfer with a barcode from the United States vaccination to Germany. And every place you went, you had to show that you were vaccinated, and masks. Absolutely. Not just you had to have the industrial ones. So breathing was tough, and it worked really great.
Hydrating was tough. Keeping hydrated.
Yes. Hydrating was tough, but totally worth it. And because of that, and getting tested. And also I think we normalized, a lot of people in the industry normalized showing that they got tested immediately afterwards, and being responsible that way too, so that going home, making sure that anything at home, they weren't bringing back something to their friends and family.
Yeah,
so
they did.
Normalizing that was also very important. And so that was something that at Essen, they were partnered with a pharmacy so that you could get tested in it was the garage, but none, like the parking garage. You walked at right from, so there was no, well, is this CVS open or this Walgreens open? It was, you schedule a time through the convention. At your time, you walk down from the convention hall, like outside and through the parking garage, went and got your testing, went back to your booth, and they texted you your results. Like, no muss, no fuss, which I did bring back so that for the Gamma trade show in March, I was like, hey, friends, this is a thing. And I feel like this was a valuable, like, if you can find a pharmacy willing to do that here in the United States, or if that's able, that's a really great resource where a lot of people really valued that, because they didn't have to, on top of all the other planning that they have to do for a convention, think about well, where am I going and how far away is it? Do I have to get an Uber or is it marking distance? All of that. None of it. You just went and got your test, which was really also very useful.
So we have a question in from Genesis of Legend.
Yay.
Okay.
Cool.
And they've asked, given that the sky is falling, are there any domestic chipboard printers? AKA, can we at least produce classic SPI chip games domestically?
So we have both been in a group that has looked at over 20 different manufacturers in North America, some in a couple in India, a couple, but all outside of China, some in Europe. And the answer is, it is the cost of making them is still not offsetting the cost of the increased freight shipping prices.
Yeah, which is amazing to think about.
Yep.
Certainly, I think you can find some people who will do that for short run, for prototypes, for for things of that sort. Or
promo card. I use them for promo cards all the time.
Yeah.
But this was something like literally what I was asking for was a 75 card with a tuck box game. So it wasn't a big, like, and the cost of even a 3,000 print run, or comparing a 5,000 print run where the individual cost goes down to a 3,000 print run in China, still it wasn't even close. It was 33 cents versus $4.50 per game.
And that's
if you're going to spend $4.50 on a $75 deck of cards, what are you charging for it? And is anybody going to buy that? So the short answer is no.
Not really.
And I will happily get on my soapbox about why, but also I think just it's a question that's commonly getting asked and should keep getting asked, because if we keep asking it, maybe we will shift into having a more manufacturing oriented industry here in the United States. More people might go into it, but at this time, absolutely not. And I revisit this without a pandemic. I revisit this every 2 years anyway, because it would be nice to have something closer and easier to have access to, and all, so I do revisit every 2 years, and every 2 years the answer is nope. And even with all the drastic changes, still no.
And of course, the other side of that coin is, we're getting used now to seeing a lot of games, with plastics, with 2-layered boards, with all kinds of really super deluxe things. At some point, just materials charges alone, because of all the supply shortages, are probably going to start forcing some of our games to head more towards like the 80s and 90s, where there weren't all these super deluxe things that it's about the enjoyment of the actual game and mechanics rather than how tightly, wildly manufactured they are. And I think we're going to start seeing that shift pretty soon too.
And I'm okay with that. Like, as much as we do one big giant box, but then, like I said, I'm looking at a lot more games that are a tuck box or a small box with cards and maybe a couple of tokens, and focusing on how good the gaming experience is with those, and doing more of those with one big deluxe thing every couple of years, as opposed to every year or every other year. For that, cost drives it, but also, yes, being cognizant of how much it sucks up resources is a big factor as well.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember, some of my most beloved games, I was cutting the tokens out with a scissors back in the 80s. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Ta-da. We can do that. So thank you so much for listening to us. Where to find us? I'm Julie from Greenbrier Games. So www.greenbriergames.com, and Briar is with an E because we're weird. And if you need to email me, it's juliegreenbriergames@gmail.com. feel free to ask any questions.
There you go. And of course, Smirk and Dagger Games, you can contact me direct at smirkanddagger@gmail. But otherwise, all our contact information is right there on the website. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks so much, everyone, for listening in. Hopefully you found it interesting, maybe settled some of your own concerns. And if not, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.